Hey everyone, this is Robert, and thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And today, I know it's kind of been a minute or two since I've done one of these, but regardless, we're starting the day right on this. On my end in California, it's overcast, cloudy, but regardless, we're just gonna take this time to chill and just have a neat little chat and just talk about anything like pretty much off the cuff. That's usually what I do here. And today I've got another vic guest here for today's episode. He is based in Canada, and he has also been a musician for a long time, and he's done a lot of work for TV shows, music albums, films, so on and so forth. If I list off the resume, I think we'd probably be here for like 10 minutes or so, which we're just going to get right to the chase. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Wesley McGinns or Wes Mack here on today's episode. And I'm really excited to do this, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, my first question to you, my good sir, is how are you doing on this fine Wednesday morning, afternoon time zone? Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. First off, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I've got where I'm coming to you from is a bunch of snow out the windows right now. It just snowed a bunch here last night, so maybe a little different climate scenario going on, but it's good. It's at that phase where the snow looks super clean and just like winter wonderland kind of thing. Yeah, man, I'm doing really well.
Totally. Yeah. We've been getting outside of some drizzle here and there, like the weather's been nice. It would be really nice to start getting 50, 60-degree weather because like for the last several months, it's just been in the 90s, 100s, and it's kind of been
Yeah.
nuts here. Especially here in like LA, Orange County. Um, but hey, we could just talk about weather for like, I don't know, a while or so, and we just kind of get way derailed the
Get
conversation,
deep into
which,
we get deep into weather.
yeah, like that, this usually happens a lot on the show where we just kind of derail all the time. But, regardless, I'm just really glad that, we're doing this and we got some topics to discuss for today.
Totally. Yeah, I got a handful of things going on. I got my Dungeons and
Yeah.
Dragons shirt going on here.
Oh,
So,
totally. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit, but now let's just talk about like, how 2023 has been, just give a little bit of a, I guess, icebreaker start, like, what is something that you've been doing as of late? I know that you're still working on music, but yeah, just take us a quick rundown of, because I know we're in October, which I'm still my God, it's shocking that we're almost at the end of the
I
year.
know.
So, yeah, just tell us how you're, like, give us a 2023 retrospective, if you may. Like, how
Yeah,
has
for
this year
sure.
been for you in particular?
Oh man, been a roller coaster of a year. Let's see, I finished my album at some point this year. I mean, I kind of finished it last year. It's coming out this year. I finished a lot of the music last year, but you got to do all the rest, the mixing, mastering, the marketing, etc. So I wrapped that up. I filmed on just before the strikes all started. I filmed on the CTV NBC show Transplant, which I get to play a doctor on that. That's coming out. Well, from when we're shooting, when we're taping this right now, it's coming out in 2 days up here in Canada. So that'll be cool to see. I shot a Christmas movie around my birthday in March in my home province of Alberta. It was the coldest I have ever been in my life. There's one particular scene where like I actually couldn't feel my face by the end. That feels like something you say when you're like, "Oh, I can feel my face. It's so cold." But it was actually reaching a point of like lack of muscle control, where we all just kind of had big grins plastered on. Yeah, so that was good. Let's see what else. I mean, that was a lot of the year. It was just like working on those things, traveling around a little bit. Honestly, yeah, wrapping up the album, shooting the movie, shooting the TV show, and then getting ready to put all that stuff out. And it's kind of, yeah, like you said, man, I don't know how the year has, how we're all of a sudden in October. Feels like we should be in like April at best. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And then, yeah, played a bunch of D&D along the way.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely been like it's been a roller coaster for sure. Um, I think it's kind of been like one of those like years that it's just kind of come and now it's just, we're almost at the end. So it's like, oh my gosh, wow, it's almost the end. Like I still can't really believe it.
I feel like that's kind of the
Um,
sentiment a lot
yeah,
of late for like everything after like pandemic
true.
feels like. I was talking to a friend of
Yeah.
mine about a record I put out in 2019, and we were like, man, that really feels like it was last year. I feel like every year since 2020 started kind of feels like it's this condensed mash where like I don't know, it just feels maybe that's just subjective to my own experience, but it feels like the last bunch of years have been kind of oddly compressed, and everyone's like whatever flow you were into a handful of years ago was people haven't really fully got back in the groove yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless, I guess we could just say it's been a wild, hectic year for sure, but who knows what the future holds?
Yeah, yeah, indeed. You always stay optimistic on that, right? Where it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
the new year, you get a fresh slate. You're gonna kick at the can every time around.
Yeah. But I guess we could just proceed with, the topics for today. Like, I don't want to ask like the generic, how did you get started, so on and so forth, but I guess when you were really young as a child, like was this always like, getting into showbiz, was that like did the bug just sort of bite? Or actually was it always something that's been a part of your blood, ever since you were like, a youngin, a wee little lad?
Yeah, I mean, I always was really enamored with like movies and TV and music. I think music had an earlier pull for me in terms of like something I wanted to do professionally. It's funny though, I don't think I really considered any of that as an actual possibility for a long time. I remember really specifically, I started playing guitar when I was 11. I started a band when I was 13. We played together for 8 years. So it was actually like a pretty good run especially at that age, like to hold, the same three guys together. I guess we actually had a couple different guys in there, but my best friend was in that band. And I remember we were sitting in my living room when I was 14 years old, and we were listening to some music, and we're, mid band practice. And he's like, oh man, like we were talking about what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives. And he's like, oh, well, I want to, play bass and be a musician. And I remember just like feeling thunderstruck because I was like, oh, you can do that? Like it, it was obvious like many people do that. That's a thing that can be done. But I don't think it really ever dawned on me, literally before that conversation, that that was an option. You could be like, oh, I'm going to be a musician. I could do that. And I remember like by the end of that conversation, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do too. Like, I think that's what I want to do. I mean, I love doing this. I just didn't think about it that way. And so that opened up years of just like playing music, making albums, playing in bars, sometimes to know people, sometimes to a handful of people, sometimes to a lot of people, and eventually turning that into a career and, getting to play to thousands and thousands of people. Somewhere in the middle of that, I don't think I saw acting as a possibility either. And like, honestly, the way I kind of got into acting was I was in a second year quantum mechanics class in university. And I remember I was really like, I was pretty passionate about physics and math. Um, and I remember sitting there like, and it was the day before the when you had to drop your courses if you were going to drop them. And I remember thinking like, man, I'm enjoying university. I'm not in a physics major. I'm getting an arts degree. I want more time to be playing in my band. I don't know that this is necessarily going anywhere for me right now. I'm sad to walk away from it, but I think that's what I'm going to do. So I stood up, walked straight out of the class, which I was enjoying, but it felt like it was a lot. And I went down to arts advising and I dropped all my math and physics classes. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to pick up two classes. And there happened to be a theater class that fit the slot. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I like, I've done some plays in high school. Like, sure, I could do some theater. And that class weirdly kind of changed everything for me of just like, at that it hit me at the right moment in life. I was increasingly like really into like filmmaking and like the craft that goes into that, both on the acting and on the film side. And that course kicked off. I ended up taking every class you could take at UBC in acting and theater without actually like going into their dedicated acting program. But yeah, I ended up doing a bunch of plays and things like that while I was there. And it just sort of continued to dump more and more like gas on the fire. I was like, oh, I really enjoy this. And like, maybe there's a way to do this. I didn't really have anyone like, where I grew up. I didn't know anyone who was like a professional actor. That career path didn't seem like an option. I think that when I started to believe that was possible, weirdly, was my last day of classes at UBC. I remember I finished a poli sci class and I walked out of my final class and I got on a bus and I went down and I had booked a one-line part on the Vampire Diaries as an actor. And doing that again, it was just like a one-liner, shooting for one day, made a few $100s, and that was it. But it opened up in my mind this like possibility that you could do that, because I think prior to that, you'd think like, oh, can one just audition and get parts and do that kind of thing? Like if you don't have someone who, gives you a blueprint for that, it seems like this lofty, impossible thing. So all of a sudden it was like, oh, you can do that. So I'm going to keep trying to do that. I'm going to keep auditioning. I'm going to keep working on music and just keep turning that crank. So that's me getting into this thing.
Oh, that is quite a story. Because like, yeah, like you said, because it's kind of like you've always been enamored by TV, film, and so on and so forth. And when you eventually started making, the big splash, so to speak, it's kind of like, oh wow, yeah, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. It's kind of
Yeah,
weird how everything just kind of snowballs from there.
totally. I think once you believe something is possible, it becomes a lot easier to continue the like day-to-day grind of it, because there's a lot of
Yeah,
just
yeah,
days where
yeah.
things aren't working. And if you don't actually think something can work out, it's really difficult. Like there's almost, I find with artists in general, you almost have to have a degree of like self-delusion of like what's possible, of you need some degree of hope and optimism to keep you doing those things, and that sustains you through periods of time maybe where things aren't going your way, so that you can get to those like loftier career moments and have some of the opportunities that I've had uh are kind of islands in a sea of like maybe nothing's going on, and then a lot is going on. And you move on to the next one, and each one of those gives you the idea. It like reinforces in your head that like, okay, cool. If I keep working on the craft of this and I keep working away at it, you can make a career of this.
Oh, for sure. And it also comes down to like the right time, like luck and preparation, and it just
Yeah.
there's a lot that you have to prepare for.
Yeah, there's a lot of preparation involved and a lot of luck involved. I feel like that gets overlooked at time. I feel like people in the entertainment industry often talk about themselves like they're an inevitable force that like it's just their talent was too good to be denied. And I always think that's bogus, because like a lot of the best musicians I've ever seen are playing to no one in bars. A lot of the best actors I've ever met, I met them in acting classes and they weren't able to get an agent. I don't think it's definitively a one to one. Like talent definitely makes it work. There is talent paired with connections, paired with luck, paired with timing, and all those things kind of have to come together. It's helpful if you can build a lot of talent into it so that the actual thing that you're trying to sell works well when it's given the chance to. But, a lot of those other dots have to get connected as well.
Right. So how would you say that um everything, I mean, especially over the last few years, how would you say that the industry had evolved or changed from when you first got your start?
Oh man, a lot of different things. I mean, the biggest is almost really recent here. The rise of like short form video content and like TikToks and like TikTok rather, and spinning off into like Instagram having their own version of Reels, and YouTube having their shorts, and like everybody trying to chase after that. It feels like that has been such a huge landscape changer. Like music, that's totally redefined the entire like A&R artist development process. The idea now that like prior to that, it was more frequent when you would have like a record label might find an artist that they believe in because they think there's some inherent talent that will work well there, and maybe they'll develop them, maybe they'll do a couple of songs, eventually do an album, they'll spend the time on it. Whereas now, usually the A&R is just, you find an artist who is already blowing up on TikTok, who has had like maybe even just, sometimes it'll just be a single sound bite, like one clip, one 15-second piece of their song has gotten reused a lot and has spun them up so high that there will be a bidding war from record labels to sign them, and then that person will be, kind of anointed to be the next big thing. And it's kind of an insane process because you will have artists who sometimes maybe recorded one or two songs, and who've never played live, who are all of a sudden thrown in. Like you'll see them, playing on like festival stages where it's like, oh, you don't really know how to work that stage yet, and the labels no longer really have like a development arm to them. And I think the spillover on that is huge. So now you end up just with this like large bloodbath of people, like kind of an arms race of everyone trying to create as much short form video content as they possibly can to try and ride high in the TikTok algorithms. Um, but I think it's kind of, it might be a little short sighted in that, like, I think it can work wildly well for some people, but I also feel like you have so little control over it. Like the three artists that I kind of personally know that like blew up on TikTok in the last few years since the pandemic, I don't think I know for like at least two of them weren't even on TikTok at the time. It was just their song got used there. Um, so it ends up sort of being this weird disconnect where the prevailing wisdom becomes TikTok is king. So get on TikTok and create a lot of content for it. But in reality, a lot of the stuff that blows up on TikTok is unrelated to what the artist is actually doing. It might just be their song has a title that gets grabbed by someone that's used for a challenge or something like that. So making a short story long here, it seems like there's a lot of focus on creating a lot of auxiliary content right now, and maybe a little less focus on like the value of a really strong song, or like a really like core nugget that's good. And I don't think people are insane for doing that. I think that's, everyone's just working with like what's available to them. But that has definitely changed the music landscape. I think it's also changed, I mean, that stuff always weighs in on the acting and film world of like, if you need more eyeballs on your movie and you hire someone who is just a social media star, that might pull in a lot of people, but perhaps they won't actually be able to do the thing. Maybe they will. It's not for me to like, I don't really want to throw massive shade on like everyone who's on social media. I think there's a lot of tremendously talented creators, and maybe the upshot of some of this is that some of those people get a chance to like have a voice and have songs out and be involved in things that they otherwise wouldn't have in the like big monoculture of the studio system beforehand. So there is a double-edged sword to be sure, but it's definitely like the landscape feels very modified by all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So in 2013, that's when you released your single duet, and that kind of really launched. Would you say that it definitely launched your career? Because I know it was like a decade ago, and looking at how far you've came, in the span of 10 years, how much would you really say that it really changed it really set the trajectory of,
Yeah.
your career as a musician?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it feels like one of those things where it's like, oh, the overnight success. I mean, I'd been playing in bands for 15 years prior to that, when that came out, but it was all of a sudden the thing that gripped, where you felt like, oh, this song, the video we shot, the artist I had feature on it, Carly McKillop, that all happened at the same time as I won the unsigned only music competition. I won the CCMA Discovery Program, and I got to do a couple of tour dates with Florida Georgia Line, and kind of all those things like coalesced around at about the same time. A lot of that really because of that song. That was the thing that was kind of king in that moment. There was like, I remember when we finished recording the demo for Duet and playing it for people, it felt like the first time I'd had like a piece of music where I didn't need to set up the clip. Like I didn't need to say, oh, it's going to be like this, and we're going to market it like this. I would play it, and the few people who became involved in my team, like management and agency and label wise, who weren't at the start of that, it was the thing that excited people. Where all of a sudden, I mean, in the case of some of the industry arm, I think they could just hear money on it, and that was, we put it out, and it when I released that song, I had no management, label, or booking agent, and it went to number 9 on the Canadian country charts, and that sort of spun off like all of a sudden there was a lot of interest. It's amazing how those things like how a single thing like that all of a sudden eclipses everything you've done before, and that's the thing everybody's interested in. They want to gather around and be involved and get on the ride with you. So that definitely blew the doors open for me and allowed me to like have a commercial music career, and everything that came after that was kind of a product of it.
Right. And you've and then you've also made appearances on TV. And would you say that um I know being a musician is kind of like the main, your main career, but appearing on television shows as an actor, do you also enjoy, being on television and getting to work with a lot of with the producers, actors and directors and so on and so forth? Would you, yeah, like being on television is also kind of like an enjoyable aspect of being a part of showbiz?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I enjoy acting just as much as music. Um, the actual like medium of it, be it like TV or film or theater, right? They each have their pros and cons. I mean, theater is probably the most fun to do, but sometimes is challenging to work into a career financially, and like it's large time commitment kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I love working on TV shows and movies, and honestly, just any day I get to be on a film set is like my absolute favorite place to be. It's like Christmas at the North Pole, kid in a candy shop kind of thing. I just like I really enjoy that space. I love getting to work with other actors and other artists on set, and just like do that kind of work. I mean, for me, there's a bunch of aspects of acting I enjoy. Some of it is just that like sense of make believe, and there's no more fun place for me than getting onto a set that's like a period piece or like a sci-fi fantasy set where it's like a big elaborate build, and between action and cut when everyone's in their costume and in character and the set is all built, and all this visual effects, like the practical effects are running. It's very easy to suspend your disbelief and just be there and all of a sudden kind of get to be a different human for and a moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and it's so true with what you're saying because a lot of us do get paid to, um, because we are playing pretending and we tap into our inner childs and we
Yeah,
make it happen.
yeah, the inner child stuff is real. I mean, I think there's huge value in that, where like I find on a film set it's really nice to occasionally check in with that, and really helpful to just like think of how much fun the 7-year-old version of yourself would be having there, and then allow yourself to do that, even when you're working on stuff that is heavier. I think you find enjoyment even in the like darker components of things. I think some of that is getting to life can be a little bit restrictive for everyone. There are certain hats you have to wear, certain bills you have to pay, certain places you have to go. One of the joys I think of acting is that you get to shed whatever your hat is and your skin is, and be somebody else for a little chunk of time, and there's this sort of a chameleon aspect there where you get to experience something outside yourself that you otherwise wouldn't get to do,
Totally.
and you get to
Um,
wear a cool costume sometimes, so
well, yeah,
so
I
there's
was
that,
just about to
so
say
there's
that.
that.
Yeah, yeah, at least we're kind of on the same page here.
Yeah, totally.
But speaking of playing pretend, D&D.
Yeah, man. D&D, that's like the opportunity to get to be an actor on a weekly basis on a show that you produce. I mean, you might not get paid to do it. At least I don't. But I really enjoy. I mean, again, I'm a geek for that kind of stuff. I love that whole high fantasy world. The thing I've loved about playing D&D with some of the guys and gals that I play with is like it's that same aspect of storytelling. Like when you actually get a good group of people, it takes a bit of a leap to really commit to the role play of it, very similar to acting on something. But when you get into it and you just like allow yourself to be a character and make decisions and have kind of like an improv story with some confines play out with you and some of your friends, very similar to acting, perhaps entirely over. It's very much just like doing a table read, that like very similar to table reads I've done for things over Zoom, only in this instance you don't have a script, so you're kind of getting to be the writer and the performer at the same time. So that's very fun, very liberating, and just like a great, I don't know, I find it a great way to get to know other people in an environment that isn't so just like direct, where it's like, oh, where are you from, what do you do. It's a cool, we're going to learn about each other in a way that's like everyone's going to throw their imagination down on the table and let that it all interact with each other, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun.
Yep. So yeah, with all of this stuff that you're doing, like, I'm kind of curious, what are some like additional like I know it's kind of weird to ask considering that we kind of work 24, not 24/7, but literally every day, like on the daily grind, so to speak. What is something that you've been picking up as of late? Either as a hobby or just something that
Hmm.
you really enjoy doing. Like I know, especially with the last couple of years have been challenging for a lot of reasons, but what is something that you've been picking up, recently?
Yeah, I mean, let's see. D&D was a big one because I didn't do that at all prior to the pandemic, and all of a sudden it afforded you the time. So that was one that I got big into, and I'm now playing on 3 campaigns with various friends, spread out all over our giant fantasy land. I also, I sometimes try and, because you end up being busy, I try and find ways to work like almost hobby aspects into career things. So for example, I really, I earlier in the year decided like, okay, I'm already into like film photography a fair bit, got a bunch of film cameras up on the wall. But I really wanted to get into like film videography, like to actually like, I was like, okay, I think maybe like Super 8 film would be a good entrance point. It's something I want to do in my life, to go and shoot some stuff on film. And I'm like, okay, well, I can work that into my career. I was planning to shoot a music video this year anyways. So I bought a Super 8 camera and we've shot the whole music video for my latest single on film. And so that's just been this big sort of learning experience. And I just decided to, rather than making it a super formal music video, it's become more of just a like my point of view and some snippets of me for the last 6 months across the country. And it feels in step with the like theme of the song, but has allowed me to just kind of be exploratory with a camera and to go and shoot stuff. And which it feels totally crazy because being a guy who's grown up shooting stuff digitally, you can immediately check your footage, you can immediately see what you shot. But we've like, I just mailed off 4 cartridges of Super 8 film where I have no idea if they even worked technically, like they could all be like brutally over or underexposed. I won't know until the film gets processed and gets sent back to me. So that's been a just like a cool kid in a candy shop sort of sandbox project that ultimately might turn into a cool video and like one more thing that I can add to my bag of tricks as a director.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just really interesting, like time just flies so fast, when you're juggling so many different hats.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you've picked up some stuff like that in the last year? Like any
Um,
particular hobbies and that kind of thing?
Getting back into video games and reading.
Nice.
I'm just kind of plain old regular Joe Schmo. So,
Oh, but dude, there's
um,
huge value. It's the same thing that you get to slip into other worlds there, right? Like I'm a big,
yeah,
I really enjoy playing video games and reading myself. That's like, it's a whole aspect of your imagination out there and just like fun stuff to
yeah.
do.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Um, so what would you say are some of the most like, because working full time, what would you say are some of the biggest like joy, like the most positive aspects, and what are some of the biggest challenges, working as a full-time musician and actor?
Yeah. So I mean, uh the positives I gotta be really grateful to just I get to do this and not everybody does. Not many people do. So like I definitely can. It's easy to kick my ass from time to time and go like, cool, but you get to, this is the thing you get to do. Uh, I think maybe the challenge of it is that it's like that it is islands in the sea kind of thing, in that like you get to act on a project, but to get to actually be there on set filming for your few days or your few weeks or whatever it is, there's an ocean of auditions around that, and content creation and doing headshots and going to classes, and music. That ocean is even much larger. It's like all the auxiliary content you have to create, grants you write, and like doing your taxes and all the like things that spill out around it for you to be able to get up there and put out that song or get up there and be on that stage. That's the like, I don't know any artist who enjoys that like grind around it, but that is, you know, the nature of the game on it. I think that one of the challenges of that is just finding a way to stay motivated and stay, I hesitate to say positive because sometimes forcing yourself to be positive isn't actually all that helpful, but to stay like grounded maybe when you're going through, like, even when I have years where I have a lot of things go right, I sometimes count up the number of no's I get, the number of no's to an audition, or no's to reaching out to collaborate with someone, or no's to somebody representing me. Like, even in years where things are going awesome and I'm shooting movies with Liam Neeson and I'm putting out records and touring with Shania Twain and all that, there's a bunch of stuff, even in those years, probably in the hundreds, of like, no, absolutely not. That's not going to work. That person ghosted me. They didn't get back to me. Uh, and that's part of it, I think, for most artists. I think you just don't publicize that part. That part doesn't make it into your short form TikTok videos or any of your social media. So you feel like nobody else is experiencing that. I think it's important to remember that everybody goes through that kind of stuff, and that, like, you know, just to try and find gratitude both in the highs, but also in finding things along the way that can sustain you. For me, playing Dungeons and Dragons every week or so is really helpful because it gives me something that I'm looking forward to that's not pegged to my career in any way. I don't need like an agent to book me that. I'm just hanging out with my friends. So I think having those kind of like grounding aspects to your life is really clutch to being able to sustain a career in the entertainment business, or probably any business. But the entertainment business is surely a roller coaster. I don't really know anyone who's been in it for a long time that hasn't had some serious ups and downs. So you just got to find a way to get through those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much well said. So, what is something that you're really eager about? Like, what is something that you're really looking forward to in the future? If you have any last thoughts, what is, where can people find you on? And, just gather your last bit of thoughts on where you see everything in the future. Like, any last bit of advice to anybody who wants to do this, and so on and so forth, to close us out for today.
Yeah, I mean, so stuff I'm looking forward to in the future. I mean, I crave this business of like, I love the next like role that lies ahead. You know, that kind of stuff. It's like an infinite possibility kind of thing. Um, I look forward to sleep sometimes and just playing video games. Um, yeah, man, you get to get up each day and try and do it again. So that, when I'm in a good frame of mind, which I am right now, that feels very appealing to me. Um, yeah, I mean, I've got a new TV show coming out on Friday as of when we're taping this. It's Transplant. I got Cape Holly Christmas, this movie coming out in December. I've got my new album that just came out. It's Hummingbird. That's available everywhere. If you want to find my stuff, my like musician name is Wes Mack. And you can find me on social media anywhere of at Wes Mack Music. I would be on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, the whole shebang. Anywhere you want to look, and my stuff should be on every streaming platform unless there's been some terrible mistake. Um, so I mean, yeah, in terms of like thoughts and looking forward or advice for anyone, I mean, I think I kind of already touched on it, of just like the last 4 years have been like an exercise in weird oddity, um, and finding ways to stay grounded, finding things that you actually enjoy doing, and putting some energy into that, even when you have to be grinding away. I've often heard not often, it's a book I read that references, this is Julia Cameron book. It talks about lying down in the boat, and the idea that you can be on a river in a boat and that you're moving, you're traveling, and you're going through rapids and you're going up and down the stream and yada yada, but that you can sometimes lie down in the boat and the boat is still moving. You don't necessarily always need to be paddling it. You, in fact, kind of have to lie down sometimes, or you'll just be too exhausted to carry on. So I think finding those kind of moments to lie down in the boat, that's key to not burning out in this zany life we're in. So maybe that's my advice for today. Who knows?
Honestly, very solid advice. This is perfect to close us out with for today. I just want to thank you so much for coming on once again. And oh yeah, where can people find you on? Just to
Yeah,
plug in your
yeah. Just my so again,
self
like
promo.
at Wes Mack Music on all social media is the best place to find me. And if you look for Wes Mack on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, any of those, you'd find my music. But social media at Wes Mack Music, and then I do have a website, wesmackmusic.com. It mainly just redirects you to my social media because that's where I'm way more active. So that's where you can dig me up.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. And yeah, look forward to see, what's the where this career, where everything leads, in the future. I mean, like, I can only hope for the best, that's pretty much what you were saying earlier. And that's pretty
Indeed.
much what I discuss for, on this podcast. It's all for positivity. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all out there that are, just still, you know, if anybody is still currently like, of what's been happening right now in LA and especially in the industry, just keep on fighting and keep looking forward to a better future. As for me, I'm Robert Jackson. Thank you for watching the podcast. And until then, I'll see you all next time. Peace.